Okay, so I'll make the note. Good evening, Good evening, everyone. I welcome you all on behalf of the Madras Tax Bar. Today we have Parth Sardi sir, who has taken several webinars for us and enlightened us with his knowledge. And today he has come up with a very unique topic: Biological Diversity Act, importance to India. So without taking much of time, I welcome Parth Sardi sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nitin, for the introduction, and good evening to all of you. A totally different topic other than tax. I thought while we all are specializing in tax, there are certain subjects which we, as educated and informed citizens, have to know about. So I thought when I was asked whether I could speak on any other topic, I said I will take up this Biological Diversity Act, and it's important. And therefore, it will be a short presentation. I will take it in the form of discussion, in the form of asking questions and then taking through the slides to see what it is, and to give you a very, very broad overview of this very, very important topic, which also has quite a lot of interpretation issues and which all of us, whether tax or other lawyers, are interested in. So without much other introduction, I'll go into my presentation. I'll share my screen with you. Can you please enable me for the screen sharing, please? Yeah, thank you. So as you see, I have said the Biological Diversity Act 2002 importance for India, but I've already put the other thing, creating value from biological resources. When you take this topic, when I talk about Biological Diversity Act, the first term which you see is biological diversity. What is meant by biological diversity and why is it important? You can see this, biodiversity, the meaning of biodiversity is the variety of all life on earth. And when I mean by all life on earth, we talk about not only human beings, we talk about not only animals, insects, and all other living things. And we are also talking about plants, plant species, etc., because they are also life on earth. So the entire variety of life on earth is what we refer to as the biodiversity. And there is a convention on biological diversity, and it has identified certain 35 different types of biodiversities in the world. And 12 of them are called mega biodiversity countries. And India is one very important biodiversity country. We have just 2.5% of the land mass, but we have almost 78% of all recorded species of the world are found in our ecological system. And having those plants and animals and other insects, continuing to have them for the next generation instead of having many of them being extinct, etc., is the subject matter of this particular act. In addition to biodiversity, one very important and unique knowledge for India, like many of what's called as Asian countries like China, etc., is also, we are very rich in our traditional and indigenous knowledge. And this is both coded and informal. There are a lot of information which was informal. We are now trying to get them codified, because without codification, we are finding it difficult to show to the world that we were aware of this 5,000 years before, not as you are talking about now. Therefore, we have also built up what is called a Traditional Knowledge Library, TKL, under the Indian Patent Office, Intellectual Property Office. We have developed, because our traditional methods are Shruti, by hearing. It comes from, I pass on knowledge to somebody and he passes on, etc. Recorded subjects were much later. Most of it was not recorded. Therefore, we started recording all those traditional knowledges, and that is why I'm talking, we are not only rich in biodiversity, we are also rich in the knowledge about the biodiversity, and that is both coded and informal. Now, with this, let's get into, I don't know why it is, this Biological Diversity Act. This act, as it provides in the preamble, One, conservation of biological diversity. Second, sustainable use of its components. And three is fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the use of biological resources, knowledge, and for matters thereto or incidental thereto. And what you find, this preamble actually comes from the United Nations Convention on the Biodiversity, which was held in Rio de Janeiro, the Earth Summit as we call it, of 5th June 1992. In fact, then it was operationalized in 1993. Then we started implementing those requirements through this Act of 2002, which came into force on the 1st of July 2004. So we are almost like 16 years down the line after the implementation of this Act. So what, according to me, is very, very important for you to notice, first is conserve biological diversity. Therefore, when we say India is a home to 78% of the species in the world, what we want is to ensure that all the 78% are conserved and available for future. They don't become extinct, like you have the dinosaurs, etc., they become extinct. We want all of them to be sustained. That's one objective. Second, of course, you have all of that, but there is a cycle. One uses the other, etc., and multiplies. Therefore, you must be capable of using those components of biological diversity, but the usage must be on a sustainable basis. Therefore, somebody has to regulate to ensure there is no haphazard use of the biological resources resulting in their extinction, because we now realize it's not enough that we enjoy, we must ensure that our future generation also enjoys. Therefore, we must have a sustainable use of the components. And when you're using those components, there are people who ensure that those biodiversity animals or plant species are cultivated and kept in circulation. Therefore, they must enjoy the benefit for conserving them. Therefore, there is an objective of fair and equitable sharing of the benefits arising out of the use of those biological resources. These are the three major objectives, and how it is sought to be achieved through the Biological Diversity Act is going to be the focus of this next 40-45 minutes presentation. Before we again get into that, just see again, many of the subjects which I take, you will find are always of international character. They all come from some international convention or charter, whether you are talked about the export promotion schemes, or I talked about HSN classification. They're all like uniform across the country because they flow out of some conventions or some treaties. So what is the treaty? Of course, we saw the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, but after 1992, it has further developed. So we'll quickly see that. The Convention on Biological Diversity, that's called the CBD, it's actually a multilateral treaty, Earth Summit of 1992. And today, 196 states, I'm talking about countries, including European Union is treated as one state, are parties to this particular agreement. Then I put a word called plurilateral. So there is something called a plurilateral, something called a multilateral. Just for your information, it has nothing to do with the BDA. When you talk about WTO or the United Nations, certain agreements are called multilateral, which means all countries which are members of the United Nations, for example, all countries which are members of the WTO, if an agreement is multilateral, they are all bound by it. It is a package deal. You cannot say, I don't want this agreement, I will take that agreement. All agreements you have to take, that's a multilateral. But there are certain agreements which some countries may say, I want to join. Some countries say, I don't want to join. Those agreements are called as plurilateral agreements. For example, you have an agreement on government procurement. How transparent should be government procurement, how you should make, there's a WTO agreement, but it is a plurilateral agreement. And we have reserved our rights not to join it because of other concerns which we have in India. Therefore, we are not bound by it. So this is the difference between a multilateral and a plurilateral. Of course, bilateral agreements in free trade agreements, etc., you know about it. Now, after 1992, we have two supplementary agreements to this Convention on Biological Diversity. One is called the Cartagena Protocol. That protocol was effective from 2003, adopted in 2000, but came into effect in 2003. That Cartagena Protocol only deals with what we call as the biosafety. What it means is movement of living modified organisms. There are living organisms. These living organisms are modified. The moment you modify, sometimes you may not know what other repercussions that modification will have on the environment. Therefore, you have what is called a biosafety. Till such time you are 100% sure it has no other side effects, etc. You want to control the movement of all these living modified organisms, like what you have genetically modified crops. You have cotton, you have BT brinjal, for example, how much of trouble we have had. All this, because the moment you modify genetically, despite testing and all that, and ensure that it has no other impact on the environment, you want to be very sure before you release them to the normal environment. And therefore, this particular protocol deals only with the movement of the modified living organisms. Then we had what we call as the Nagoya Protocol, which was in 2014, it was adopted in 2010, came into effect in 2014. And this Nagoya Protocol is specifically talking about transparent legal framework for benefit sharing. You will remember in the first slide when we talk about the objectives of the Biological Diversity Act, one of that was equitable benefit sharing. So what was thought about in 93 was put on a larger legal framework in 2014, and therefore again India will follow. And in 2014, we implemented what is called an Access to Benefit Sharing Regulations 2014, about which also I'll be talking about. So the Convention on Biological Diversity, coupled with the two supplementary agreements of the Cartagena Protocol and the Nagoya Protocol, constitute the basis for this Biological Diversity Act and for the regulatory mechanisms we are developing in India to ensure that our biodiversity in India is used in a sustainable manner and at the same time giving benefit to the community which sustains those biodiversities. So that's the objective of this particular agreement. Now, before entering to this act, I've just written a few items. I have written curcuma longa. Then I have written Azadirachta indica, aloe vera, lycopene, Piper nigrum, all different types of names. I've written this just for one very specific purpose. Curcuma longa is our turmeric, manjal. Azadirachta indica is neem seed, vepangotta. Aloe vera, you know, kattade, which everybody is now using for moisturization purposes, and also in the beach when you walk in the morning, you can have aloe vera juice with buttermilk or without buttermilk. All of you know whoever is going to the beach for a walk. Lycopene, all of us take tomato. The red color in the tomato is given by the item called lycopene. People have identified this component lycopene when you can extract, concentrate and use, for example, it can prevent degeneration of diseases of the eye as we grow old. Piper nigrum, black pepper. Everything that either jeera or we black pepper, or when we talk about fenugreek, benthium, how much of medicinal properties they have, how used. Now, all this is what is the traditional knowledge. We knew turmeric had antiseptic properties. We knew turmeric can do certain things. Everybody, even today, a lot of people, when you have some sore throat problem, you take turmeric with milk and take, and you know it has got antiseptic properties, etc. So we have a traditional knowledge of all these items being a biological resource under the biodiversity. And you may be surprised to know there are hundreds of patents on different aspects of turmeric, different aspects of neem, different aspects of aloe vera, on lycopene, black pepper. The moment they come to know, for example, from an Ayurvedic text, that neem has this property, then what they do is they try to break up the seed, analyze what are the contents of the chemicals. Then they find, oh, this is the chemical which gives it a pesticide property. Immediately what you do is you try to concentrate and then you are able to get, and then hello, sorry, and what you do is then you are able to develop a neem pesticide. So today we have neem pesticides, a biopesticide. You have soap, you have neem in it. You have toothpaste, you have neem in it. You have clove, you use it in your toothpaste. So every single item of our regular use is now going towards these biological resources which are part of the Indian biological diversity and the knowledge. In fact, people in India knew about the important medicinal and other properties of each one of them. Okay, this can act as an anti-inflammatory agent. Now, whatever we had for thousands of years, now we have realized the importance of these things. And because of the CBD, we are now trying to ensure that the access to these resources, the use of these resources is regulated in such a manner that a benefit is given to the Indian people, and at the same time, you are also able to keep it on a sustainable basis. This is one thing I wanted to bring. These are all not part of the Biological Diversity Act, but I wanted to give you that. The next one is again a very interesting slide. This I have extracted from the 101st Sarga of Valmiki Ramayana in the Yuddha Kanda. In Valmiki Ramayana, you know, Lakshmana, he is hit by Indrajit and he falls down. He is almost in a coma and on a deathbed. So what to do? Everybody is crying. At that time, the doctor in Rama's army, Sushena, he tells Hanuman, there are 4 types of herbs: Vishalya Karani, Savarnya Karani, Sanjeeva Karani, Sandani Karani. These are what called as Maha Aushadam. They are not simple Aushadam, they are Maha Aushadam, they are a very big medicinal thing. You go and get this, and they can get people who are dead also out of the death, and they can be born again. That is the type of herbs about which we had knowledge. And you know, of course, Hanuman did not know what to do, so he brought the entire thing. And because he brought the entire thing, all the monkeys which had died in the fight, because they were not thrown out, they all became alive. Whereas the Rakshasas were all thrown into the ocean, therefore they could not be revived. So the knowledge which we have on the biological resources in India, their important medicinal and other properties, how can they be used, is an extraordinary traditional knowledge which we have in our ecosystem, in our cultural system. It is across, either you are talking from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, you go everywhere, you have such types of traditional knowledge which is available. Now, what we are trying to do is to ensure that the benefit of these flows to India. Why? Because all this knowledge is now obtained, immediately people go to the United States, file a patent, and after getting the patent, they try to prevent Indians from doing whatever we were in any case doing. And because we always gave it for the greater humanity, we never kept it as a monopoly to ourselves, but we were prevented from doing it. Now we are putting a stop to all that through this Biological Diversity Act. So these are 2 different types of examples I wanted to show how important are these. Today, either you take toothpaste or you take any type of soap, or you talk about any type of beauty products, L'Oreal, Garnier, etc. Everything. Can you think of any hair dye without mehendi, which is our Mardani, which is what we knew for years together? That's how we should do. Not only putting it in the hand, you can also use it on the head, etc., on the hair. So all these traditional, and everybody is accessing these resources from India and making millions of dollars of money. You have a small, let's say, La Prairie, and they say 50 ml, $225, because it removes all the skin, this thing, etc., aging of the skin, and it makes it very supple, etc. All the traditional knowledge and the ingredients, in fact, come from the Indian biological resources. Now, with this introduction, let me get into the legislation itself. Now, you know the objectives: conservation of biodiversity, sustainable use of biological resources, equity, benefit sharing. And of course, for achieving these 3 objectives, we have to have a regulatory authority. Therefore, we are talking about creation of the National Biodiversity Authority, and also we are talking about the State Biodiversity Board. Now we have a Tamil Nadu Biodiversity Board, Kerala Biodiversity, Uttarakhand Biodiversity Board. Each state has got a biodiversity board to regulate the access to the various biological resources from that particular state. As I said, this is implementing the CBD, and from 1st of July 2004, it came into existence. Now, before I go to the Act itself, there are 4 major biodiversity hotspots in India. All of us know Western Ghats, of course, is one of the most important and ecologically active area in India, the Western Ghats. The Himalayas, of course, Himalayas is not only common, we share it with China, we share it with a part of it with Pakistan, etc. But Himalayas is again a very important biodiversity. The Indo-Burma region, and the other is called Sundalands. The Sundalands, it starts actually from the Nicobar Island and goes up to Java, Sumatra, etc., right up to Indonesia, Malaysia and Indonesia, it goes down to that. The Sundalands is also a very important biodiversity act. In fact, both when you talk about Lakshadweep on the western coast And when you talk about Nicobar, etc., they are very, very important biodiversity hotspots in India. And as I was pointing out, you can easily see we have 50,000 varieties of rice, 5,000 varieties of sorghum, 1,000 varieties of mango. Just think biodiversity with that. It's not one single mango or anything. You're talking about 1,000 varieties of mango, etc. Similarly, we have also any number of other species like cotton, sesame, cucumber, eggplant, etc. So many different varieties we have. Now, with this, therefore, how do we achieve the objective of the CBD through this particular act? Therefore, there is a regulatory authority. We talked about the National Biodiversity Authority and how are they regulating. Therefore, and what are they regulating? These are the only two provisions you see to get a good picture of this Biological Diversity Act. There is a National Biodiversity Authority, which is the apex body. I don't know how many of you know the NBA has its headquarters in Chennai. It is in our Taramani, OMR Road. It is in Tidal Park. So National Biodiversity Authority is actually headquartered in Chennai. Then of course you have each state has got a state biodiversity board. Then within each state we have of course a lot of local bodies, panchayats, municipalities. Therefore at the local level you have something called a biodiversity management committee, because access to biological resource will take place from small places, and the people in those places know what is contained within their ecosystem. Therefore, they are also involved in the implementation of the act. So this is the regulatory body. The National Biodiversity Authority regulates some transactions. The State Biodiversity Act boards regulate certain transactions, and the benefit sharing, etc., takes place right up to the local level at the Biodiversity Management Committee. That is how the entire scheme operates. Now, the first and most important section I would talk about is section 3. When we are taking, because the purpose is sustainability, and you are talking about also ensuring that they are also preserved. So preservation and sustainable use are there. Therefore, the regulatory authority must first ensure that the access to these biological resources in the biological diversity is controlled or regulated. What they do, therefore, is first, Section 3 of this Act specifically provides that a person should take prior approval, not post facto or anything. He cannot access biological resources unless and until he takes the prior approval of the National Biodiversity Authority. For what purpose should he take prior approval? For obtaining any biological resource occurring in India or knowledge associated thereto. It is therefore not only the actual resource. You may have the knowledge. Fenugreek, mangosteen is a fruit which affects the metabolism. Therefore, it is useful in slimming. So the moment that knowledge comes, then you try to access the mangosteen fruit and see what I can formulate and then give it to people who are obese so that they can do slimming, because it slows down the metabolism without creating any side effects. Therefore, we are talking about not only the biological resources, we are also talking about knowledge associated thereto. So you have to take prior permission for this. But is the permission required for any and every purpose? No. It is required for 3 purposes. First is research, the other is commercial utilization, and the third is called biosurvey and bioutilization. Therefore, there are 3 purposes for which, if a biological resource or knowledge is to be accessed, a prior permission from the NBA is required. Whatever I have highlighted in bold, biological resource is a defined term. Research is a defined term. Commercial utilization is a defined term. Biosurvey and bioutilization is a defined term. To the extent necessary, I will deal with the definition, because idea is not to trouble you with all the intricacies, but to give you a broad overview. Now, this prior approval, who requires? These are the people required. A person who is not a citizen of India. Any foreigner requires prior permission. Even an Indian, if he is a non-resident according to the Income Tax Act. So now you know why I took this. There is some relevance to taxation. So at least you have to define a citizen of India. If he is a non-resident according to the Income Tax Act, then he requires a prior approval. Then a foreign company, that required. Even an Indian company requires a prior approval if it has any non-Indian participation in its share capital or management. The words are very, very important. Indian company, but it has any non-Indian participation in its share capital. So we have even a situation where even if one share is held by a foreigner, we will say there is a non-Indian participation in its share capital. The law is not developed, whether it should be one or it should be significant, etc. Some issues are going on. Similarly, in management, if there is a non-Indian participating in the management of the company, then that will be treated as what we call as a Section 3(2) company. And then these are the four persons: a foreign citizen, Indian citizen non-resident, foreign company, Indian company having a non-Indian participation in its capital or management. These are the four types of people who require prior approval from the National Biodiversity Authority, which is the apex authority, for accessing the biological resource. And he has to do it for these three purposes and not for other purposes. Therefore, how these purposes are defined becomes very important, and what is a biological resource also becomes important. Therefore, we will see a few definitions. Biological diversity, I have already explained to you, but there is a very specific definition in this case. We are talking about means the various organisms for all sources and ecological complexes of which they are part and include diversity within species, between species, etc. equally. Now come to biological resources, because obtaining a biological resource is important. It means plants, animals, microorganisms or parts thereof, their genetic material, even the byproduct of plants and animals is a biological resource. So long it has got actual or potential use or value, it will come under biological resource. What is excluded is only a value-added product. You all know, for example, Chyawanprash. Chyawanprash, they advertise it has got some 27, 72, 100, whatever are the types of herbs are contained in that, and it boosts your immunity, etc. Now, if I buy the Chyawanprash, I'm actually buying a value-added product. But if, let's say, Patanjali manufactures the Chyawanprash, it first arranges to get the 50 herbs and then mixes them along with honey and other things, etc., and then manufactures. For accessing those biological resources, in order to make Chyawanprash, that will come under biological resource for commercial utilization I'm going to talk about. Therefore, when you are obtaining plants or a part of a plant or any byproduct of a plant for commercial use, etc., it will come within the regulatory ambit. What is not within the regulatory ambit is only a value-added product. There is a definition of what is a value-added product also. So what you saw in the definition is prior permission for obtaining biological resources. This is the meaning of biological resources. Very broad meaning of everything, plants and animals. The only people who are not useful to any purpose is human genetic material. That is not covered within biological resource. Then you saw research, commercial utilization, biosurvey, and three purposes for which you require permission. There is a definition of biosurvey. It's simply a survey and collection of species, subspecies, genes, components, and extracts of biological resource for any purpose and includes characterization, inventarization, bioassay. Again, please don't get into that. Suppose I'm a foreigner. I come to India because I know it's a great biodiversity area. Then I try to find out the various types of insects and other things, and I put a catalog that is amounting to biosurvey, which means even for identifying and cataloging them, he requires a prior permission. Therefore, we want to ensure that no one just like that comes in, makes a survey, etc., or puts a set of insects and take them to see. These insects in India behave in this manner. The same insect in European Union, how will they behave? If you want to study, then you require permission, because those are biological resources and you are using them for biosurvey and bioutilization. So this is one. Any type of survey and catalog of a biological resource require a prior permission. Now, commercial utilization, a simple name, end users of biological resources. You use it for drugs, you use it for industrial enzymes, food flavors, fragrances, cosmetics, emulsifiers, oleoresins, color, extract, gene, etc. used for improving crops and livestock through a genetic intervention, but does not include conventional breeding and traditional practices. Therefore, Commercial utilization as a normal meaning is I access a biological resource in order to make a drug out of it. Or I take the color and use it as a food color, then it will come. Or from the jasmine, I crush 2 tons of jasmine in order to get 5 milliliter of jasmine essential oil. I'm getting a fragrance. I require permission for that. So all types of commercial utilization which uses biological resource to ensure that I conserve them and also sustainable use, I need to have a control when I give permission, how much quantity I'm giving, for what purpose I'm giving, and to ensure that for that particular use, I also get the benefit to the growers of that particular resource. I should have the control. So commercial utilization is probably one of the very important purposes for which access requires permission or prior approval from the National Biodiversity Authority. But of course, they clearly exclude conventional breeding or traditional practices in use in any agriculture, horticulture, etc. So whatever a farmer is doing by taking seeds from his output and using that for the next season, etc., these are what we call as the traditional practices in use in any agriculture, etc. Those are not covered within commercial utilization, which means a farmer, in order to access a biological resource, in order to grow it, and then let's say he breeds, he wants to get a new type of high yielding tomato, therefore he is doing as a conventional breeding, etc., then he may not require permission. So certain exclusions are there from commercial utilization, but broadly, whatever is generally used in the markets for drugs, etc., those are covered under the scheme of access. The third one is research. Research means, the study or systematic investigation of any biological resource or technological application that uses biological systems, living organisms, or derivatives thereof to make or modify products or process for any use. Therefore, research is again very, very broadly defined. Any study or systematic investigation of any biological resource is research. So if I want to have access to fenugreek, and in order to study what makes the fenugreek an important thing with reference to diabetics, let us say, then we want to know what is that portion of the fenugreek which gives that immunity to diabetics. If you do study and systematic investigation, it will come under research. Therefore, anybody in section 3(2) who wants to do research or who wants to access a biological in order to use it in a drug or a fragrance or a flavor, etc., or he wants to simply catalog the biosurvey, etc., he requires the prior permission from the National Biodiversity Authority. Value-added products means they are products which contain portions or extracts of plants in unrecognizable and physically inseparable form. That is why I gave the example of Chyawanprash. From the Chyawanprash, you cannot recognize or isolate different herbs which have gone into that. Therefore, it becomes a value-added product. So, value-added products are excluded from the definition of biological resources. Therefore, again, just because it's a totally new topic, the Biodiversity Act is in order to implement the Convention on Biodiversity, in order to ensure that the biodiversity is maintained, sustainable use, and do. Therefore, they said accessing of biological resource itself is controlled right at the beginning through a prior permission for 3 purposes of commercial utilization, research, and biosurvey. Now, all this is important for us as individuals. Now we know at least we have so much of biodiversity and we have so much of knowledge about the importance of many of these herbs and, of course, animals and insects, etc. Therefore, to use them for the commercial purpose, research, etc., we must also get our return. And by giving prior approval, we can always control. You may want 5,000 tons. But if I give 5,000 tons, I may not be able to sustain and I may not be able to grow anything. Therefore, I say I cannot give more than 2,000 tons. Then only I will be able to sustain and go from season to season and generate the same amount of that particular product. Therefore, a control becomes important, and that is what is happening now under this Biological Diversity Act. Now, there are different ways of obtaining biological. This is important because obtaining biological resource by these foreign persons, etc., is subject to prior permission. You can obtain biological. One thing is you can go to the market and get it. That's the easiest way. But I am a company. I know there is another company which has got excellent biological resource. I can simply acquire that company By acquiring the company, I'm talking about acquiring the equity shares, etc. But along with it, what I am looking at is the biological resource which is of value to me. Therefore, they are obtaining a biological resource indirectly through an acquisition or merger is probably also likely to be caught within the scheme of Section 3.2. You may be obtaining it from Punjab Agricultural University, Tamil Nadu Agricultural University, Tamil Nadu Veterinary University, etc. You may be getting some biological resources. That is also obtaining. Any number of research institutes. You may simply go to the field and collect it. And there are what we call as wild species or land races, etc. When we talk about all these things, there are any number of ways in which you can obtain biological resources. As of now, the thinking is any of these methods of obtaining biological resource will be subject to prior approval if you are a foreigner, Indian non-resident, foreign company, Indian company having a participation by foreigners in either the share capital or in the management. All of these people will require permission. Now, with this, we'll go to the next topic. Now, we saw about National Biodiversity Authority. Now, there is something called a State Biodiversity Authority, as said. That State Biodiversity Authority is a regulator for Indians. Let us say, for simplicity, Section 3.2 is a non-Indian, let us keep it, and Section 7 will keep it as an Indian. Therefore, if I am an Indian citizen, I am a resident in India, I want to access a biological resource in order to do some activity, then I can go and access it, but I only need to give a prior intimation. I don't have to take a prior approval. I need to give a prior intimation to the State Biodiversity Board. This is what is Section 7. No person who is a citizen of India or a body corporate registered in India shall obtain any biological resource for commercial utilization or biosurvey and bioutilization. Now you can see Section 7 conspicuously omits research. For non-Indians, for biological resource, for research also you require prior permission. Whereas for Indians, for obtaining a biological resource in order to research, I don't even have to give a prior intimation. I need to give a prior intimation only for commercial utilization or biosurvey and bioutilization. The words are slightly confusingly, they have written biosurvey and bioutilization for commercial utilization. There are some problems in drafting, but we'll not get into that. Therefore, you have to give prior intimation only for these two purposes. Therefore, I am an Indian, I access a biological resource and I do research. They are really not concerned, okay, you do research. But then they will control. If I want to transfer the result to L'Oreal, let us say, then they will put me at there. You can't transfer the results to another 3-2 person without obtaining the prior permission. We'll see that. Therefore, National Biodiversity Authority Apex, prior permission for accessing a biological resource to non-Indians, and a prior intimation and not a permission to the State Biodiversity Board. Now you can ask me, by giving prior intimation, if he accesses, what happens to the conservation and sustainable use, etc. The State Biodiversity Board has been given the power. You may give the prior intimation, but immediately they can examine where you are going to access it from and whether the quantity which you are intimating, whether it will be on a sustainable basis or not. If it is not, they can immediately give a direction to you prohibiting you from accessing that biological resource, or they can say, no, you can access only this much quantity and not the quantity you wanted before you go and access the entire thing. So prior intimation may result in prohibition or regulating the quantity depending on the sustainability of the particular biological resource which we are trying to obtain. So these are the two broad methods, Section 3 and Section 7, through which the regulation of the access to biological resource is obtained, and it is generally done with reference to commercial utilization is always covered, biosurvey and bioutilization is always covered, research for non-Indians is covered, for Indians, for research you don't even require a prior intimation. This is the broad scheme. I told you earlier, Indians do not require approval or even intimation for accessing biological resource for research. Therefore, Section 4 will now say, but if you are going to transfer the results of any research for monetary consideration otherwise to a person non-Indian, let us say, which is Section 3, then you require the previous approval of the National Biodiversity Authority. So it becomes very, very important for an Indian citizen also to know while he can access, let us say, tomato, tomato is a biological resource, in order to get the lycopene, and from the lycopene, I want to do experiments, etc., to see in what type of eye diseases it will be useful, etc. I am doing the research. But after having obtained, I say, lycopene has got this type of thing, this type of thing. There are 2-3 different varieties which are there. This is the one which really gets the result. Therefore, I want to transfer the result to somebody who wants to make an eye serum out of that, and he is abroad. Then I require the previous approval of the National Biodiversity Authority. Research is encouraged to Indian citizens, but transfer of results of the research to any foreigner for monetary consideration, etc., then you require the previous approval. That is how research is regulated in both cases. Now, the last and important section for this Biological Diversity Act is the purpose of all this research is that you will develop some intellectual property. And when you are developing an intellectual property, and if it is based on an invention, and it is on invention based on any research from a biological resource, then you cannot apply for that intellectual property. For example, you want to apply for a patent. As I said, if you just go into any Google and ask for patents on, let us say, curcuma longa, which is turmeric, you will find hundreds of patents are there. What we all know is that turmeric has got certain properties. But by research, then they isolate what are the various components in the turmeric, and then they find this particular component is the one which is really giving this particular property. Therefore, what you do is you take 1 kilo of turmeric and from there extract 5 grams of this and then you convert it into a tablet and then say this will prevent cancer. For example, there are things you can go and see on the website. There is a company called SAMI Labs, SAMI, SAMI Labs in Bangalore, which has got a C4, C9 turmeric complexes, which will be 1,500 rupees for 60 tablets or something. Of course, research has shown, I know them also, that it prevents cancer, or if somebody is having a cancer and is taking it, it stops at the metastasis, it stops, it doesn't allow it to progress further. So the turmeric has such a property. The only thing is the right quantity in order to come, the research is made. So if you are obtaining turmeric from India, doing all this research and come out with the C4 complex, therefore you want to obtain a patent for that, of course you will be able to make a lot of money. Then we control that by saying, no, you cannot apply for the intellectual property without applying the previous approval. We are not saying that you cannot, you must take the previous approval of the NBA. Why? Once you come to the NBA, okay, you have the Indian resource based on which you have this patent, you are now going to make money. Please do the benefit sharing. Finally, all of that will come to royalty sharing so that the community which cultivates that is also benefited. So that is the previous approval is with reference to benefit sharing is what we are talking about. And that is what section 6.2 says, that while granting, they can impose benefit sharing or royalty or both, or also they can impose conditions arising out of the commercial utilizations. Plant varieties are exempted because plant varieties are set by a separate act called the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act 2011. So they said that will not be covered. But if you are going for, let us say, a new variety of cotton, you will register it under the Plant Varieties Act, then that will govern. But if you are going for not a plant variety, but you are going for another intellectual property, like what I said, C4, C9, C10 complexes of turmeric, etc., then it is not a variety. Then you will be going for a patent, in which case under section 6.1, you take the permission of the National Biodiversity Authority and also pay. Therefore, you will see section 3 controlling the access, section 4 talking about transfer of research, and section 6 talking about intellectual property. All of them are geared towards one, ensure that our biological resources are conserved, they are used on a sustainable basis, and for whatever use, for commercially and for research or biosurvey, you are making money, share it with the people who are doing it so that the sustainability can be further enhanced. So that is the whole purpose, and that's really what are the most important sections as far as the Biological Diversity Act is concerned. Now, you will see from like what we have in the foreign trade policy, some licenses are subject to actual user condition. Here also, I am a foreigner, I apply to the National Biodiversity Authority, I get permission to access a biological resource. For some reason, I am not able to use it, but I want to transfer it to somebody else. Because it is given to me and the permission is already taken, it does not mean I can transfer it to anybody. If I want to transfer it, again a permission has to be granted by the National Biodiversity Authority. Only with their approval I can transfer it even to the other person. So the actual user condition is also improved through this section 20 of the Biological Diversity Act. Like any other act, of course, like section 25 of the Customs Act, section 5A Central Excise Act, we talk about exemptions. But section 40 of this act says for notified species or biological resources, the entire Biological Diversity Act may not be applicable. So that power is given to the central government. And we have here notification in 2017 where we have identified 421 different plant species, which is what actually enables us, if I go to the market and buy tomato, I buy amla, I buy behendi, then I put the crushed amla and that is nelikai and I think, and then I try to make a paste for my head, etc. in order to get some property. I'm using it myself, so there's no problem. But these 421 plant species are those one commonly bought and sold in the market. You don't stop trade or facilitate them. Therefore, these are allowed. But there is still a thing. I go and obtain tomatoes. So I want to make ketchup out of it. Now, ketchup is again, you are taking it for commercial utilization. Therefore, there will be an issue with reference to that. But if I'm using it within my home, for normally doing it with my rasam, etc., yes, there is absolutely no problem. So even though section 40 says the entire BDA may be inapplicable, this notification clearly says, provided these are normally traded as commodities. And you have to prove that these are normally available as commodities and you have also bought it for trading purposes. But if you're using it for commercial utilization, research, bio, you still require permission, even for these notified exempted commodities. That is how they have kept, because otherwise you don't know whether somebody will buy for some purpose and take it and use it for some other purpose. So to ensure that, under section 40, they have put a condition. So you have a regulator regulating access for the three purposes, define them. Then you have also an exemption clause which is applicable in this section. Now I want to do 2 or 3 more slides just to give you again. These are very important from knowledge perspective. Now I said this section 3 and 4, which means having prior permission for transfer of research, etc., is inapplicable to crops under Annex 1.1 of a particular treaty. This is called International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. This is again a very, very important treaty. It is also called International Plant Treaty, International Seed Treaty. This is again dealing with food security. Now, one is food security is very, very important. Therefore, it is under the United Nations, food security. Second is, whatever biological resources are available, they must be available for further research and breeding, for increasing the food output in order to have a food security for the whole world, and also for training for food and agriculture. Therefore, all those crops which are notified in that international treaty are not subject to the Biological Diversity Act. It's only, I'm just giving you the input, you don't have to go through any of that. The Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Environment and Forest have notified that whatever is listed on that will not undergo the rigors of the Biological Diversity Act. And we saw in the last bullet, India has notified some 26,563 accessions belonging to various crops from Annex 1, which means for those crops, in order their utilization and conservation for research, breeding, training, food and agriculture, and also we talk about food security, you will not restrict their access to these particular crops. So this is one thing which is linked to the Biological Diversity Act. Now, if you require an approval and if you do not require, what happens? There is a punishment, imprisonment can be there up to 5 years, and there is a fine up to 10 lakh rupees or both. Similarly, if you are to intimate the State Biodiversity Board and you are not intimating, there can be a punishment to 3 years or a fine of up to 5 lakhs. And these acts are cognizable and non-bailable. So it's a very, very important act. It's not only with fiscal penalty, it also talks about improvement, therefore imprisonment. Therefore, it's very, very important that people stick to the strict requirements of section 3, 4, etc. Then the last aspect is the equitable benefit sharing. As I said, under the Act, equitable benefit sharing is one aspect of it. And in 2014, the Nagoya Protocol came and wanted to give a legal framework. So as soon as the 2014 protocol came, we also notified what we call as the access to benefit sharing guidelines or a regulation in 2014. This clearly gives what is the meaning of fair and equitable, how we have determined that amount, how that amount will be credited to what is called a National Biodiversity Fund. And we are also talking about how it will be distributed to the people who are the persons who contribute to the sustainability and the conservation, how to distribute, etc. These are all dealt with in this 2014 regulation. This is the third aspect, fair and equitable sharing. So you have a regulation governing that as well. Just to give you an idea of it, there are two types of benefit sharing. I purchase a biological resource for commercial, then a particular percentage of the purchase price is what is payable as a benefit sharing. I'm again not getting into the details, they are not important for you. The other is, I may be accessing thousands of biological resources, each one what is the purchase price, what is to be paid. I said I don't want all that. I will pay on my ex-factory turnover. Then they say if your turnover is up to 1 crore, pay 0.1% of that. If it is above 3 crores, pay 0.5%, etc. So you have different slabs under which some of them are challenged. In fact, I had argued a case for Divya Pharmacy, which is part of the Patanjali in Uttarakhand. There is a single judge decision on this particular aspect, which is now under appeal before division bench, on the regulation itself, whether it violates the section, etc., which again is a pure legal question which we have talked about. So the third aspect of this is governed through these guidelines or the regulations of 2014. Again, I don't want to get into those other details. Then one other aspect is, now there is a modified guidelines in 2019. It is only a draft guideline as of now. It is still not notified. Just to give you a complete glimpse, therefore now the access to benefit sharing regulations are further being modified, and in 2019 these draft guidelines have been put on board. This broadly, this is what they have indicated. What is the amount payable upfront and what percentage, if it is between 1 crore to 3 crore, 3 crores and above, etc., is what has been notified, but it is not yet come into force. So this is the last point of my slides. And before I hand over for questions, I just wanted to highlight to you, even as early as, for example, 1998, etc., we had problems of this coming up in the United States, whereby there are people who have done experiments on turmeric and have taken patents for turmeric on the ground. Turmeric has got antiseptic properties, etc. Now, the problem with that was, if the patent is granted, the moment you are using turmeric for antiseptic, for example, we are talking about Beaker turmeric, then it say antiseptic. And how many of you, I don't know whether in these in my days at least I know, if you have a small boil or something in your hand or leg, etc., what your mother will do is to scratch the turmeric, manjal, then take that and with a little salt, and if there is a gingerly oil, and they apply, and in 2 days it will slowly, the whole thing will come out, and your boil most of the times will become normal. So we had that type of thing. So it was used for antiseptic, but somebody had patented it, and if he patents it, the problem is he will prevent us from using. So in 98 itself, we had to fight in the United States, and then we had, the problem we had was having document sources to show that we were aware that it has got antiseptic properties, etc. Finally, we were able to show from the old Charaka Samhita that when in the olden days, when a lady gives birth to a child, after the umbilical cord is cut, on the umbilical cord, the turmeric paste is applied because it has got antiseptic properties. We were able to trace that and then had that particular patent revoked in the United States. So you have people who acquire the knowledge from India and then try to monopolize, whereas our system has always been to throw it to the public and use it for the maximum set of people. So this is the type of activity which we are now trying to prevent through this particular Biological Diversity Act, and it is very, very critical for the future generation, so that they know, they have documents of these are the properties of these types of things, and our people have developed these and have kept their knowledge for your use for posterity. So conservation, sustainable use, and equitable benefit sharing are some excellent objectives of this act, and we are trying to implement this act through this particular act. Now, last, because it is a tax webinar and we are doing something, so I have to link it to the tax. It is like the story of the small boy, who had to go for an exam, and he prepared everything about the cow. And the exam, they asked about the coconut tree. So he wrote everything about the cow and then say the cow is tied to the coconut tree. Like that, this entire Biological Diversity Act, one thing is when you have access to biological resources or you are paying a royalty, etc., to the NBA, you will have to say, is there a service which is rendered by NBA by allowing you to access the biological resource? And if so, if it is a regulatory authority, government, etc., have you to pay GST? Is it payable on reverse charge, etc.? There are tax implications. Because death and taxes are everywhere. So tax you cannot do without taxes. So even in the Biological Diversity Act, there will be a tax. So I just wanted to link it to our tax thing and stop here. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's, as I said, very broad indication. It's not for any in-depth knowledge, etc., but in a very, very important subject, which as individuals we should know about the Indian biological diversity and its importance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presentation and bringing us to knowledge our resources, our character, and our history of biodiversity. There are a couple of questions in the chat box. I would request Mr. Kripa Shekhar to unmute and ask the question. You can unmute yourself and ask the question. If not, the question of Mr.
A factory that obtained authorization under hazardous waste rules is also required to obtain authorization under the biomedical waste. I could only say this is out of syllabus, madam. This is not with reference to Biological Diversity Act. It is under the Environment Act. As you know, there is a regulation of 1989 relating to hazardous waste management rules, etc. So if it is an hazardous item under that and disposed, yes, you require permission, but it is not under the Biological Diversity Act, but it is in the Environment Protection Act and the hazardous regulation 1989 under that.
The next question is from Balaji Sai Krishnan. Sir, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Good evening, Partha sir. Sir, I just wanted to understand the increased role of traditional TKDLs during this pandemic situation, and the fact that currently India has entered into agreement with 9 patent offices across the world for sharing traditional knowledge. Do you think, considering the present situation, there's an increased need to enter into more agreements with other patent offices to share our traditional knowledge?
Yeah, and see, the traditional knowledge library is very, very important. And of course, as I said, because of the problem which we had in the turmeric case, then only we started compiling this TKLD on a very digital library on a large scale. Now we have an excellent library. Yes, whether it is pandemic or non-pandemic, that knowledge is very, very important. But we are having, as you said, with 9 patent offices. But then if you look at it, if European Union, US, and Japan, if these 3 are taken care of, almost like 90% of the patents in the world are taken care of. And of course, in India, we do have that. So there are 2-3 things. One is, if it is a biological resource access in India, we control it through Section 6. But if it is a biological resource access from somewhere else and then you apply for a patent for something, then in order to prevent this only, we have given the rights to TKDL to the US Patent Office and others to search. The moment you come to this, please always search and then decide whether to grant a patent or not. But if there is still a problem and some wrongs are always taken, we then take action to get those patents revoked through our normal systems and procedures. So whether it's pandemic or not pandemic, it is very, very important to preserve and ensure that we are not prevented from doing what we have been doing for generations. That's the whole purpose of developing the TKDL. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Now I request VS Jaykumar sir to ask his question. Sir, you can unmute yourself, sir.
Ms. Patsardi,
Yes,
there are
sir.
some companies in Pondicherry who are exporting human placenta. Human placenta is that every hospital where after the the child birth, cut this and throw it in the waste basket. Some companies identified these products and they were exporting it to various countries internationally. One of the clients came to me. But yeah, what happened was internationally the problem on AIDS started coming in. You can't export from India, they banned it. So my question is, will it come under this Biodiversity Act? Number two, this Tirupati and all that, you have the human hair sacrifice.
Yeah.
They're being used for making this or whatnot. This enactment can attract. So I want more answer from you on this. Lastly, you made an interesting point. If one company has got a tremendous amount of biodiversity, resources, the other company can take over. How do you value this? Like HR, intangible. Yeah, these are the questions.
Yes. Sir, as for the first question is concerned, or two questions are concerned. One, the export of the placenta or the export of human hair, they do not come under the Biological Diversity Act because you will recall the definition of biological resource by definition excludes human genetic material and anything to do with the human. That's why I said the humans are probably the least useful of the people. They talk about plants, animals, their parts and products, but not with the animal. Therefore, the placenta, etc. But now if you see, most of the people are preserving the placenta and others because at a later point of time, they are doing it in the laboratories and freezing them, etc. Because later on, when you are very 70, 75, you have some diseases, you may be able to get from them the cure for that. So now we are developing those laboratories and also the banks in which all those happen. But export, etc., then we'll have to look only at the FTDR Act to see whether those exports are prohibited or not. But they are not being regulated under the Biological Diversity Act. Those are the first two questions. For the third on the valuation, it's a totally different art, not a science. It is just like you can put any value on anything depending on what your client wants. So then of course you have the income tax, transfer pricing, or the valuation either in customs or GST, we all get it. It's in the eye of the beholder. So how desperately I want a particular biological resource may determine what is the price which you are prepared to pay. I don't think, but there are of course methods which are there to determine how much to value, etc. So you apply one of those methods and do it, but there is still, it is an art, it is not a science. So it can fluctuate. It's also subject to negotiating skills. That is how it happens. But in acquisition of this, you know that people do value it. There are some people who have come to me to value, for example, some patents for drugs, etc. What is the likely amount I can pay? Because you are hoping that you will get the patent 4 years down the lane, then to cross the clinical trials, and then it will have a 5-year lifetime, etc. During the time, how much I'm able to make. So you need to estimate all that and give a view. So it requires a knowledge of the particular sector. It requires knowledge of the particular invention and how critical that invention is. And you also know what are the ways to circumvent that. Because if some invention is easily circumventable, it will have a low value. But it cannot be easily circumventable, it has a high value. So it attracts a lot of factors based on which we put value on any invention or any biological resource which I'm accessing, etc. I think it depends on a case-to-case basis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Swaminathan sir has raised his hand. Sir, you can unmute and ask your question, sir.
Thank you. Sir, in the plant and other things specification, like whether necrotic drugs, those, suppose for example, ganja leaves, we have those things. Whether those things are excluded in the Biodiversity Act, whether they
No,
are
sir,
specified
not
like
at all excluded. They are part of biological resource means plants, animals, or parts thereof, including any genetic thing, etc. Therefore, you may have a separate regulation of the narcotic and psychotropic actions, but you are accessing them for commercial utilization or research or biosurvey, you still require prior permission from the
So the
BDA.
Act never excluded those part of
No,
those.
it does not. The exemption under Section 40 to certain things, provided they are traded. Provided they are traded. Other than that, it will be controlled. Yeah, it will be controlled. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks.
Thank you.
But to add to that, planting of ganja and all that is an offense under NDPS Act. Very planting. You cannot plant and grow.
Yeah.
Am I audible,
Say
sir?
that- No, I want a clarification whether it is excluded or included in the Biodiversity
It is not. It
Act.
is not
That's all.
excluded. It is not excluded. Yeah.
Naturally, you cannot grow. That is why it is not forming part of that law also.
Sir,
Sir,
I think
one
yeah.
question from me. What happens if I carry the seeds abroad and plant it abroad, sir?
Yes, sir, that is it's like a stealing. It's like smuggling. Okay. Therefore, if you are caught, there is a problem. In fact, this act is 2004. Okay, 1st July 2004. We were having problems till a year before last because it was like this. People, when they come from Europe, they put 10 seeds in their packet and have come. When they have gone, they have taken some packets, etc. The problem is nobody really realized the importance of this act and are doing.
Yes,
Actually, 100% contraventions, no doubt. If you are caught, of course, you have, as I said, there's a 5-year imprisonment also is possible. Up to that is possible. So it is like anything else. You are jumping the red light, also getting caught. But now, because nobody carries or nobody takes a chance now. In the last 3-4 years, it has become very strict now.
There is no minimum quantity permitted also.
No, nothing. Nothing is permitted. Yeah.
All right.
Because as you say, if you may take 10 seeds. If they are germination seeds, you can go multiply them and grow them into any amount. No, therefore quantity etc. is not material. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Very good lecture, sir. Knowledge acquired today.
Now I request KRK sir to unmute himself and ask the question. KRK Reddy. Yes, sir.
Yeah, good evening, sir. It's an extraordinary webinar. It's one of its kind, I can say. Myself, biotechnologist from Hyderabad.
Yes, sir.
So unfortunately, even after 18 years, 18 years, it is not percolated down to all the stakeholders.
Correct.
That's unfortunate because even state biodiversity boards are not fully equipped with the knowledge.
Correct.
So this knowledge dissemination is very critical in this country. Unfortunate, sir. We are also facing the same problem.
Correct.
Of course, last one decade, nobody is there to solve our problems. So even National Biodiversity Board, they are conducting kind of a knowledge dissemination workshops, but unfortunately, we know that even the bakery guy also uses yeast, and they are using yeast last several, maybe hundreds of years. But unfortunately, is it really comes under that? Who is really paying that royalty to under benefit sharing? These are all big, so many questions are there.
No, you are absolutely true. Just like the you are right. 2004 it came into existence, but I have been dealing with it only in 2014. People asking me questions, what is this act, etc. So of course we know ignorance of law is no excuse, but somehow this is how it has been going on. But now I think at least all the big multinationals and other companies, because they also have the corresponding law in their country, they have become extremely careful. And because many of them have this problem, the initial years, 5-10 years, that is why they came up with a notification by which they say, you now make a full declaration like our voluntary disclosure scheme, no? You can start on a new scheme. So they are trying to do that because the idea is not to punish, but the idea is if you come clean, at least I will take the royalty and license and give it to the stakeholders in order to do the sustainability, etc. So, but after that, they are going to be very strict, and now they are going after a lot of people. Lot of biodiversity boards have started issuing show cause notices to the various people. That I'm aware across the country, a lot of notices are being issued.
But the issue, sir, in fact, actually, the law says that you have to take prior approval.
Yes.
See, So if I start doing research, even as a domestic and accessing to the soils of different states, I have to go and get the permission from the State Diversity Board to isolate the soil or take a soil sample from any farmer's land. But unfortunately, we are not getting our approvals. So it is taking a lot of time. Yeah, it is taking a lot of time. So I cannot stop my research. So therefore, at least we should have a kind of a leverage of submission of an application even after that, because we are not exporting to outside of the country. This is within the country.
Yeah. I agree with you. In fact, because you are involved, because this group was mainly tax, I didn't get into them. The major problem, like any other thing in a country regulator is the regulator also is struggling with the new things and no permissions are forthcoming. I attend some of the NBA hearing. I find that there is a committee of 35 members. So what type of decision they make, how they make, when they will make, it becomes very, very difficult. I'm only sharing it with. There are difficulties in the sense fast approvals, etc., are not taking place. You are absolutely right. So that problem is what is to be addressed by all regulators. The moment you get, if people come to you, there must be a time-bound thing by which you should either say yes or no, what conditions, so that people can decide whether they want to get on with it or not. That definitely that problem is there. That apparently is there. Because according to me, because
anyway, sir, I really congratulate. I congratulate you, sir, because you have taken up a very important aspect. Because everyone is affected in this country, if at all, if the law enforces.
Yes.
A lot of people will be affected because, of course, they are now. I mean, not that serious, but if at all, if the law is really enforced, a lot of people will be behind the bars.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I think you have taken up all the questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Now
Thank you very much from my side for my MTB for giving me one more opportunity to talk on a totally different subject. Thank you all.
Sir, there is another hand being raised by Mr. SR. I don't know.
Okay, no problem.
Sir, you can unmute and ask your question.
Good evening, sir. My name is Sudarshan. So it's a very fundamental question. The question is largely, how do you differentiate between a bioresource vis-a-vis a mineral? The reason why I'm asking is, if you look at international tax area where I practice, India-UK treaty, tax treaty specifically talks about oil as a natural resource. So there's a dispute going on, not in India, another issue internationally, as to whether solar energy is a natural resource, and the treaty does not talk about oils. If you look at Income Tax 293A, also talks about oil. The point is, how do you differentiate between a bioresource vis-a-vis a mineral? Is there any distinguishing factor? Because minerals also exist in bioresource, for example, coal.
Yeah. So this definition of biological resources, as you would have seen, we are only talk about plants and animals, and then blah 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 of them. Therefore, we are only talking about two species, and we are excluding human genetic resources. So oil, solar, etc., according to me, are not governed by this Biological Diversity Act. Because we talk about biological diversity means the variety of species, flora and fauna in the country. That's what we are talking. Oil or natural light, we don't consider them as part of the flora or fauna. They are not part of our biological ecosystem. You may be mining them from the bed or from the sea, etc. And solar, you are just drawing the sunlight. But the definition of biological resource clearly does not cover them. So it will not come under the Biological Diversity Act. How do you want to do? The one other thing is because of the law of the seas, etc. You are saying anything above your country and anything below your country and anything up to 200 nautical miles, which is the exclusive economic zone. Everything under that belongs to you, etc. We have the law of the seas which governs that. So you are still, those resources belong to you. Therefore, no one else can come into the 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone and try to mine oil, for example. That's why Bombay High is our own. It is actually part of India because up to the 200 nautical miles, we have 12 for a territorial integrity and 200 nautical miles to the exclusive economic zone. So in the exclusive economic zone, we get those rights. But this is not governed by the Biological Diversity Act. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question, sir. When you concluded, you made a concluding remark where you drew an analogy saying it is akin to tax. So my question is primarily on that. If I understood rightly, there's a if I remember you mentioning some percentage to be shared, where
Correct.
there is an exploitation. Is it akin to a tax? Is a question. So does it have the characteristics of a tax, or does it go into characteristics of a fee from a government perspective? How do you classify it?
Now, this is going to be decided probably by the Supreme Court, because we already have the problem with the royalties for mining, the various types of etc. Is it a tax or fee? It itself is pending. Therefore, here also you are paying actually a royalty for accessing the biological resource and using it in a, let's say, commercial utilization or research, and you are paying a particular percent of the turnover. But according to me, it probably is not in the character of fee for one reason. There is no specific service, etc., which is rendered. What they are doing, you are accessing the resource. I need to sustain that resource, and therefore I have to give it to the indigenous community which is cultivating to ensure that it is sustained and it is used on a sustainable basis. Therefore, I am trying to get the money to them because they are doing this particular thing. So it is in return for them doing the service, but the NBA and others come in between to collect the money and of course distribute them. So maybe not in the SP, because they have a separate application form fee of 10,000 rupees, 25,000 rupees, which are coming in the form of fee. But this benefit sharing is an amount extracted for the use of that particular resource, which is more in the nature of a royalty, which is what we call as benefit sharing. So whether that is going to be a tax or fee, I think when the Supreme Court decides with reference to the minerals, I think we'll try to use them at that point of time.
Many thanks.
Sir, we have come to the end of our session. So now I request V.S. Jaykumar sir to propose the vote of thanks.
Mr. Patsadi, you did an extraordinary job of a subject, totally novice, and we are all, taken for a beautiful journey. And I thank Mr. Reddy for having spared his time from Hyderabad to share the importance of the topic and highlighted that our clients are going to be some pesticides and animals, and also they be imprisoned. So we can even look for a new branch of law. And Sudarshan, of course, brought some interesting of the relevancy of tax. The example you gave about the cow and the tree, I think we have now become cow and cow, or only cow. So I got to add some few anecdotes which happened when Mr. Reddy talked about soil is being tested, you must take a prior permission. Now, I had an interesting example. When I went to Dubai, I took the sand and I said, I will take it back. Someone told me, be careful, they'll catch you at the airport. So then I went to the stall, got a ready-made sand tested. So I took it. Next time I went to Wimbledon, I took that small granules. I said, as a memory. Again, they said, be careful, they'll catch you. Now, I didn't know the importance of that because I thought I'm not carrying it valuable. But after Parsadi tells me, except Parsadi, everything else is valuable in this world. And he is most precious. And, 5 threats, from what I understood, was there are 1.8 million animals and species in the world. And there are 5-6 threats for this particular biodiversity. With this, I conclude. The threats are, it could be from, urbanization, pollution, it could be invasion of species, use of the land, and so on. So we are all used to this exploitation of the land. So I'm sure there's what Parsadi gave us a good eye-opener, and I'm sure this jurisprudence will grow a great height. Mr. Reddy, I request you to, why don't you give a lecture on this next time? And Parsadi and you can share and give the legal and illegal part of it.
Yes.
So I also thank the people who raised the question. It is very, very eye-opener. And thanks Swaminathan, thanks Sudarshan, thanks Mr. Reddy, and Mr. Sai, who did a wonderful job of putting us in a good path. Thank you, Parsadi, once again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Then I meet you back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jaykumar sir. Yeah, thank you thanks to the speaker for taking his time. Thanks, Parsadi sir. We're expecting more sessions from you and all the participants and all those who have asked the questions. Thank you.